All right, so this next lesson is called the 5-step sales process. Again, this is a very great tool to kind of, structure your whole process when you're going out to sell. Before I dive into this, I want to talk about a few things. Every single person is a salesperson, regardless if they think they are or not. Sometimes people are really very good at it, very natural at it, and some people need to be developed. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to learn how to sell. That's just what it is. You're going to have to go out there and be uncomfortable. You're going to have to go out there and communicate with other human beings, and sometimes you're going to be afraid, sometimes you're going to be scared. I know I was there, but you have to go through it. So some things that I would really do before I even started going through a sales process or a sales meeting, and we did talk about the presentation, is get into the right state before you even go out there and start tackling your meetings. So some things that I always recommend people do is, number one, make sure you're dressed for success, right? No one wants to sit down with somebody who is not polished, who isn't, clean cut, doesn't look put together, not wearing something nice. Hey, if you only have one suit or one outfit that's, your favorite one and it's the best one you have, if you have to wear that every day until you make enough money to buy a new one, I would do that, right? There's something that changes in your physiology and energy when you're dressed professionally and you're in that spotlight. Think about it. When you walk into a room, you want everyone to be thinking of who is that person and feel drawn towards you, right? And that sometimes comes down to what we wear. We judge people all the time on what people wear. So again, if you know that going into a meeting, make sure that you look that way. Second thing, I always say have a big smile. Be enthusiastic about what you're selling with people. Have a firm handshake, right? Do all the things that you know that successful people do and model them the moment you sit down with your potential customer or person you're going to be working with. Right? So have that at an all-time high. And then the last thing is, do something that's going to amp you up before you get into that meeting. That's going to get you in that high vibration or high state of energy. Athletes do it all the time. They have rituals where maybe they listen to music or maybe they do something like a little, chant that's going to get them to feel a lot better before they go and take action. What I usually do is I put some personal development on in my car or a good song, and I sit there in the car and I visualize myself having a successful meeting, and I'm taking all the music that's coming around. I feel really good. So when I get out of my car and I enter into the building and I'm doing my meetings, I'm already, really excited to be there. And that positive energy, if that person's meeting you for the first time and they feel that, they're going to be really excited to hear what it is you have to say. So again, some simple things to kind of be aware of before you even go out and start tackling an actual sales process. But we're going to jump through this right now, and this thing is very, very simple. Again, it's the same thing like the perfect presentation. Model that, model this, and you're going to be able to do a lot of good out there in terms of when you're sitting down and explaining to people what you have to offer them. So the first thing we know, and we talked about this earlier on in the program, is get into rapport right away. People like people who are themselves, right? So same physiology. If they're sitting down, you're sitting down. Right? There's no need to stand up and present to somebody sitting down in front of you, get to their level, right? If it's small group, same thing. Now, if you're on a stage, it's a little bit different. They're sitting down in front of you. Obviously, that's different. But if you're going to a meeting, make sure you're sitting. And if you're both standing, I would get both of you to sit down. Now, the opposite is true if you're on a phone call meeting and you're going through a presentation. If I'm on the phone, I don't normally sit down. I stand up and I walk around and I pace. Because when you're up, you're in a high energy state, and they're going to feel that through the phone. So that's kind of what I do, a little bit different than if I'm actually sitting down and meeting with somebody. Now, how they're sitting matters too. I'm going to sit exactly how they're sitting. Now, I'm not going to sit there and kind of dance around a bit and get comfortable, but I'm going to be very similar in terms of if they're sitting upright, I'm going to sit upright. If they're leaning forward, I'm going to be leaning forward. If they're laid back and lazy, I'm going to have to do that because I want to make sure that they feel comfortable with me. The same thing goes for you. Okay? Tone of voice, we talked about it, right? You don't have to talk really high pitch or really low, but kind of be on their same page, right? Same tempo, same kind of, levels in terms of how they communicate. Understand the representational system. So what does that mean? Remember I talked about the filters. When they're talking, communicating with you, be aware of what's coming out of their mouth, what are they saying, so that you can have a better understanding of what they're actually getting from the conversation. Breathing, remember I talked about it. If they're a chest breather, stomach breather, try to match that as much as possible. And then listen for key words. Right? Listen for keywords they say often, and then kind of use that as you talk with them to kind of get them to fall in love again with you as a person. So that's like the most important thing. If you don't have this type of rapport before you even start talking and sitting down with them or even explaining what you're doing, you've kind of lost the whole thing. This is very important that you do this first. Second thing, ask questions and shut up. That's the whole process. If you don't know what they want, if you don't know what's going on in their mind, how can you help them? right? I see it too often or not where people kind of sit down with somebody, they're excited about whatever it is they got going on, and they instantly just, have verbal diarrhea and spit everything on this person without asking any questions. And at the end, that person looks at them and just kind of nods, say, well, that's great. I'll let you know, right? The more leverage you can get from, getting intel, the better, right? So ask questions like, what do they do? What are they interested in? Discover their internal representations of success. So what do they think success looks like if you're selling something that's going to help them be more successful? Find their desired state. Are they always happy? Are they always kind of gloomy? Where are they at? Discover what their motivation is and decision strategies, and elicit some of their values. So what do they value most? I was very good at this when I was in personal training sales. When I sat down with somebody, I had 30 minutes, and my job was to sell them a $10,000 training package for a year. And in the beginning, my first couple months, I was really bad at sales. I knew a lot in terms of fitness. I did 6 years university. I've got a bunch of degrees around fitness and training. But when it came to selling people, I was just fire hosing them with facts, figures, and details, and they were just looking at me feeling overwhelmed. So when I made this switch and I started, really caring about them, finding out what they wanted, things started going in a totally different direction. I remember sitting down with somebody and asking them, what do they value most? And they said, my family. What else is important to you? Like, well, right now my energy levels are very low and I don't feel very good about myself and my confidence is down. And they're saying all of these things now that I'm taking notes on so that when I do sell them and they have an objection, I can bring that stuff back up to remind them of why they would probably want to do whatever it is that I had to offer them, which at the time was training. Right? I have a lady who said, the one thing that I really value most is my kids and it's time with my family. Right now, I'm so exhausted when I get home from work that I can't even, play with my kids. And that bothers me. So at the end, when I brought up my price for what I was going to do with her and I kind of walked her through it, she was, what? Oh, that's really expensive and I don't think I can do that. And so what I did was brought back up that thing that she valued most. I said, well, listen, if you don't do anything different about your health now, when are you going to get the energy to play with your kids? A moment ago, you said that was very important to you. And I believe I can really help you change that situation by getting you in the gym and showing you what you need to do. And if you value that at the highest level, there should be no question that you need to do something about your situation or your current results. And she bought, right? Because I was able to listen early on, gather some intel from asking the right questions, and then now she's more inclined to release that information with me because we had good rapport. And then when I went for the close, I was able to bring this stuff up because that's what matters most to them. It didn't matter what I knew. It mattered what could I do for them and how could I help them and how can I make them feel, right? People always will go back to how you made them feel. And like I said, selling is a transfer of emotion. So you want to make sure they're feeling really good about making a decision. Okay, so number 3, find a need, right? Get their need and link a value. Provide a solution to their problem and ask if they can see any value in this. If no, move on. So like I said, I found a need with her. Well, I'll use that same example that she wanted to, have more energy to spend with her, kids. That's a very important need for her. Right now she doesn't have that, and I can offer that and help her do that. But you got to remember, most salespeople though, you might not get that right away. Most salespeople will waste 80% of their time on people who buy nothing. Okay? If you spend 80% of your time on people who are going to buy, then they will spend more on you. So remember, if I'm sitting down with somebody and asking them questions about health and wellness, and just say that was the thing, and they're like, well, I'm in great health, my body percentage of fat is low, I went to the doctor, I'm perfectly fine, I know everything about training, and I'm really excited about, coming into the gym and working out. Sure, I might be able to help them with a little bit of stuff, but they might not be someone that I'm going to sell. So I'm not going to spend the next hour or 30 minutes going through and doing a really deep job of, trying to push on what it is I'm trying to sell them. So again, be aware when you're having a conversation with somebody. You're not going to be able to sell everybody on what you have to offer, but you got to kind of figure out where they're at by asking the right questions. So then there's some things you can kind of add here, a conditional close. Do you see any value in this? See, there's just some statements you can use. Or is it fair to say that if we solve this problem, then that would be valuable to you? Would that be valuable to you? Sorry, tongue twister there. Right? So if we solve that problem of you having more energy, would that be of value to you? People are going to say yes, right? The more yes kind of head movements, and even nod your head as you're talking, the more they're going to be, I guess you'd say, giving you less resistance when you go in for the actual, close. And then tag questions, and you can kind of add to that too. Then it would be of value to you to solve this, wouldn't it? So just kind of making them agree with you again. Wouldn't it make sense for you to do this, to solve that problem? Yes, there are ingredients, great. Move on to the next thing. And which is number 4. You're going to link the need or value to product or service. Show how your product or service will solve the problem that you uncovered earlier. Make a clear proposal of how, but with little detail as possible. Only tell them enough to make it possible for them to make a purchase. Never use words but or understand, right? If you're dealing with women, men, you know, I understand, you don't understand, right? You ever get in that conversation? So be aware of that. And say things like, what would happen if, compared to, because, and repeat their values and keywords as you close them. So I'll talk about this as an example. When I first started in sales and I was selling training, I would do a great job of showing them how I was going to help them. But I went too far with the details. Now I was telling them, all right, so what we're going to do over the next year is we're going to train 3 times a week. I'm going to work on, and then I went through every exercise that we're going to go through. I went through all the different things we're going to do through the program. I went through all the different things they're going to do for their diet. And at the end of that whole thing, they were overwhelmed. So when I made my switch, I kind of simplified and said, listen, what we're going to do to get you started is we're going to work out 3 times a week. We're going to do total body workouts, which is going to give you more energy. We're going to monitor your nutrition, making sure that everything's proper so that you're on track to the goals that you set. Very simple, but now they have an idea. Okay, I'm coming to the gym 3 times a week with a trainer. They're going to show me what I need to do, and they're going to monitor my nutrition. Great. Compared to, all right, we're going to come into the gym 3 times a week. We're going to do shoulders, back, chest. We're going to do bench press. We're going to do lat pull downs. And then on Wednesday, we're going to do lower body. We're going to do squats, lunges, calf raises. And then for nutrition, we're going to make sure you're having 4 meals a day. We're going to have chicken and rice here. Then you're going to have, you know, eggs and toast. Like, it was just too much information. And they were just overwhelmed and couldn't make a decision because their brain now is rattled because you are going to be spending a lot of time doing that, and it's going to overwhelm people. So just keep it very, very simple. And again, it's going to come from trial and error and some practice. And definitely, I would say find somebody in your industry who's doing really well and see what they do. That's what I did when I first started. Found the top salesperson, took little bits of nuggets from them and kind of made it my own thing. And then, boom, it started working really well. Okay, and the 5th thing is close, which is ask for the sale. You know, most people don't even ask for the sale, right? Most people think after the presentation or after the conversation, people are just going to wake up and throw a credit card at you or say, you know what, I'm in. So it doesn't normally happen. Does it happen sometimes? Of course, but most of the times, no, you're going to have to actually ask for it. So you're going to get some, you know, objections sometimes, or more than often, you're going to get them quite often, depending on how well your presentation went. But what I always say is ignore them and go back to step number 3. And step number 3 is find their needs. So when they give you an objection, go back to their needs. So when someone said to me, ooh, that's expensive and I don't want to do that, I say, person, that's okay. Let me ask you a question. You know, about a moment ago, you said that you really wanted to lose that extra 10 pounds. Is that still true? Yeah. And you really wanted to have more energy so you could play with your kids. That's still important to you, right? Yeah. And now I'm getting them back to that point, and then I'm going to ask them again to make a purchase at the end of that. So I would say, well, listen, if those are very important to you, we need to get started right now, because if you look at your past results, you look at your life a year ago, and you look at the year before that, nothing's really changed, right? You wouldn't have said the things you said to me. We wouldn't have been having this meeting. So if you leave here today and don't make a decision, what's really going to be different this year? And most of the time, they're going to be like, well, nothing. Okay, great. So don't let that happen. Let's get you started, and I'm going to help you, right? And that was my close, and it worked a lot, actually, okay? Closing by believing in yourself that you can help them, okay? Solve their problem. You must have a high belief in your product and service to sell for them, to buy into you and what value you can provide them. That's a big one, right? Sometimes I meet people and they look like perfect. They are like unbelievable in terms of communicating. Their sales process is perfect, but they're selling something they don't really believe in. And I've even gone into that habit before where I was selling things and I'm just like, I really don't believe in this thing, but I have to sell it. And I had a tough go at it, right? People feel the energy. That's why these are great tools, but that's not the only thing that's going to make you successful in sales. You're going to have to really believe in what you're doing, believing in your product, believing in your service, and really believing you can actually make a difference for them. If you really believe you can help people, then they're going to, more often than not, feel that energy from you and naturally kind of want to work with you. So again, have a really high belief in what you're selling. If you're not, find something that you can get involved in that you really believe in and go and do that. Okay? So there are only ever 4 objections, really. Time, money, it won't work for me, and I don't believe you. Right? So again, these are pretty easy to kind of handle as you go through. But here's how you handle an objection. Listen to their full objection. Don't ever cut somebody off. Right? Well, listen, no, okay, because what happened, I've seen this happen where the guy was about to say no, and then they didn't want to face that objection, so they went and started talking about something completely different. Like I remember when I was selling, it was protein shakes at this one time, and it was for network marketing, and we were talking about the business side of things with this one individual. And the guy I was with was new and was kind of afraid of what this guy might say as an objection. So the guy came up to the time when I said, all right, so I think you should really do something like this. He started talking, and the guy I was with started feeling it was going to be a negative thing. So this guy literally stopped him and said, well, listen, these protein shakes, man, you work out all the time. They're going to be really good for you. I think you should just buy the shakes. And his friend actually got really mad with him and says, listen, I don't, act a little bit surprised, right? Because if you have a thing that's really going to make a difference, like I remember when I was in the training industry, someone would come in and say, I want to lose, 100 pounds, right? And I asked them, how long you been out of shape? And they were like 5 or 10 years, like a long time. I said, great. And at the end of it, I said it was $10,000. And, they said no. I acted like shocked. I was like, whew. Oh, sorry, hold on a second. And I went back to what they had said earlier. And here's how I handled that objection and got them to get started. I said, listen, if I put a car outside, one of the newest cars that you wanted, whatever car you could think of, and I offered it to you for 10 grand, would you find the money? They're like, oh, of course. It's funny how you will find the money for a car, but when it comes to your health, you just kind of brush it to the side. You've been out of shape, you've been, in this situation for so long, and your goal is 100 pounds, and you haven't been able to do it in the last 5 or 10 years. What's going to make this year different? The thing that's going to make it different is somebody showing you the how to do it, how to actually get the result. Okay, so now I kind of literally blew out that objection because they're like, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. You can say things like, oh, I get it. You mean that's the only reason why you're not buying. So someone says, well, I really don't have time to do this. Oh, okay, so is that the only reason? And listen, if they say yes, then perfect. You handle that one reason. If they say no, also make note of all the different objections. You might have to handle 7 or 8 objections, until you actually can close them on whatever it is you're selling. So don't just give up on the first one, right? Be persistent. Keep having the conversation and dialogue until you can find a hole to kind of position it, okay? And if I could show you how you could have more time, would you buy? If they said that was their objection, right? So again, if I'm going to use network marketing and personal training from my background, or really just anything, if I had to handle time, people say, well, I don't have time to do this. Okay, perfect. If someone says that to you, it's really a false objection. Everybody has time. People always find time for the things they really want to do. So what I normally say is, well, I totally, I don't say I understand. I totally get where you're coming from. But let me ask you a question. Do you think you could spend 30 minutes a day on something like this? If it was fitness or the network marketing industry? And they would say, well, no, or I don't know. I always go back to our meeting. We just sat down for 30 minutes. You made the time to get on the phone with me. You made the time to show up and talk with me. What if we just did this a little bit more often? You've showed me that you had the time. We just spent the time. So time really is not the main issue. So what's the real issue? They could say money. And sometimes it actually is. They want to do it, but they just are embarrassed or don't have the money. So I always helped them out. When I was in training, I'd find them a payment plan that they maybe be able to afford, or cut back some of the sessions so that they could at least get started, right? Find an area, right? That's what I always ask. Or when I used to sell training, some of the things I would used to do in the beginning, and if you get really good at doing this, you're going to be able to handle money objections like nobody's business. I would find out how much money they were actually earning a year and what they were spending before I got to the end, so that I knew exactly where they were at financially, being able to then guide them there. So for example, some of the questions I would ask is, what do you do for a living? And so when they started talking, I kind of have an idea, how long have you been doing that, of what certain salaries would pay. Then I would get dive into their nutrition, and that's where I find out other holes. Do you smoke? Some people said yes. How much a week do you spend on smokes? Say it's $100 or $200. Okay, great. Do you drink? Yes. How much a week do you spend usually on alcohol? And if they ask, why are you asking these? Well, I just want to know, because if I give you recommendations for nutrition, I want to make sure that I can show you how you're going to save money. So again, you're just showing the value that you're going to give to them. But what I found is sometimes, usually they're spending like $1,000 a month on things that are bad for their health. And my training, if I broke it down, financing might only be $500 to $1,000 a month. So I just can transfer those funds into something like this, right? And when I was as I was selling network marketing, and when people would say to me, well, I don't really have the money to get started in this business, I would say, okay, do you spend $3 to $5 a day on products that you consume right now? Like, do you go to Starbucks or Tim Hortons, or do you go out for dinner? And they say, yes, perfect. You already are spending the money. Take those dollars, put it here. So I found a way to transfer money in different accounts to get them started. Now, if they were really broke and had nothing, I then helped them out even more. Is there anyone you could talk to maybe loan you the money? I remember when I was selling personal training, there was a 16-year-old that really, really wanted training. He he only had half the money for a deposit. And I just said, could you ask your mom and dad? He actually went home, talked to his parents. They found the other, half of the money. They got him started, and then away he went. So, kind of give them some ideas of what they could come up with to create more income. It won't work for me. That's an easy one to handle. Well, that stuff won't work for me. If I believe that, I wouldn't be here today. There's tons of people that it's working for. Let's just get rid of that one right away, right? Or I can't do that. Well, who decided that? You're already making an assumption before even giving it even a shot. Right? Think about it. How many times have you started a new job or a new business or a new something and you didn't know how to do it? Every time, right? And then somebody came in who could show you by result. They knew what they were doing and they trained you on how to do it. Right? Everything is taught. Unless you were born with a unique gift and it's the only thing you can do and it's like it can't be taught, which is not always the case and sometimes it's very rare, but most things can be taught and learned if the person's willing to go through it. So again, very, very simple. And then the last one's, I don't believe you. If they say that, it's because you don't really believe in what you're selling. But if you do get that, say take the belief off you and put it into somebody that you have that has a little bit more confidence in it, right? I remember when I first started training. This is a kind of embarrassing story for me, but I started personal training and I was 260 pounds, so about 100 pounds more than I am now, I believe. Yeah, 100 pounds more than I am now. Now I knew everything. I studied it, I knew it like the back of my hand, I knew the psychology, I knew the physiology, I knew the nutrition. I just wasn't an advocate and I didn't apply what I knew. So I was going out and training people, and sometimes people were like, well, no disrespect, Chris, look at you. So what I had to do was say, you know what, I totally understand that. I definitely am not, I haven't been practicing what I'm preaching. I'm on track to do that now, but let me explain something to you. Do you see? And I would talk about all the people that I was working with and talk about all the results they were getting through some of the stuff maybe I was applying or some of the stuff that they got me to apply. So I'd say, listen, like see these guys here, they're doing the workout programs that I've created. They're getting great results. And I'm going to be following suit because I'm obviously starting that right now. Same thing in business. If they don't really believe in what you're doing, reference somebody that they might know that's doing something you're doing that is in line with where you're going, and use them as a reference point. So you can always talk about other people and kind of bring them in to listen to what it is you have to say. Okay, and step 5, the last step, is to answer the objection as above and going right back to establishing the value. Reestablish value by going to step 3, and remember, resistance to buying is merely a lack of rapport. If you sense this, build more rapport. Rapport can be broken to reinstate a new level of deeper rapport with your prospect. So what does this mean? Well, if you feel like things aren't going your way, change it. And sometimes it's a physical change, right? A physical change can sometimes do a lot more than just having a conversation. I've seen Bob Proctor actually do this a lot, where we'd be sitting down doing a business meeting one-on-one with somebody, and you can kind of sense that it's maybe not going to the liking of what he wants. He'll actually get them up and they'll walk and they'll go to another room or another area. He's like, come with me. And as you get them to walk, obviously they start feeling a little bit different. You kind of talk about other things besides business. You're building a stronger relationship. And then boom, before you know it, you're back into a stronger state of rapport. And then as you continue to talk now, they're going to be more inclined to listen to you. Car salesmen do it all the time, right? You come in, you sit down in the office, you talk about the numbers. They then offer you a coffee or a water or something. They get you to come up. You go get it. You come back. You talk a little bit more. You get up. They take you for a test drive to get you to feel and experience it with your body, the actual car you want to drive. And as this whole process is going down, they're building more and more trust and rapport with you by having those conversations and getting your body to move. So if you feel like you're losing it a bit, do something that's going to change it, right? Do something that will change it, either shifting your body or get up and move somewhere else. I've done things that were a little drastic, and this is something that I've learned from one of my mentors. She used to say that she would knock over a cup or like throw her papers by accident, and what that does is called a pattern interrupt, and it interrupts them in their psychology of what they were thinking about, and now they're focused on that distraction, right? So when the pen fell or the paper fell, she would, oh my God, I'm so sorry. She would go down, she'd pick it up, and that person would be confused by what just happened, and then she'd come back to the conversation, start talking about something completely different, getting a little bit more trust, and then going back into the business. So, use everything that I share with you in terms of the 5-step sales process, and think about the process that you're going through right now, right? Look at the perfect presentation. Look at the 5-step sales process, and break down your business, your service, whatever you're trying to sell. It might even just be yourself for a job. Break down how can you model this in your own life and apply it immediately. Take these tools. I spent a lot of time and money to learn some of this stuff, and I'm giving it to you so that you can improve your results in whatever it is that you want to do. So I want to thank you again, and hopefully this whole program has provided you enough value that you feel you can go out and conquer anything.